ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever felt drained, pulled in every direction, and yet powerless to protect your own peace? Imagine choosing silence, not as weakness, but as a weapon of strength, a shield for your soul. For 30 days, what happens when you stop reacting, stop explaining, and stop giving your energy to someone who thrives on control? Today, we will uncover the hidden moves, the subtle manipulations, and the life-changing lessons that emerge when you reclaim yourself. By the end of this journey, you'll see why silence can be louder, stronger, and more liberating than words ever could. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people believe that when you stop responding, stop explaining, or stop engaging, you are trying to punish the other person. But true silence is not an attack. It is an act of self-preservation. It is the moment you recognize that constantly reacting, defending yourself, or trying to be understood is draining your emotional energy. Silence becomes the space where you finally breathe. Self-preservation means protecting your mental and emotional well-being when a situation begins to cost you your peace. When communication turns into constant conflict, manipulation, or emotional exhaustion, continuing to engage does not make you stronger, it makes you smaller. Silence in this sense is not about winning or losing. It is about stepping away from what harms you so you can remain whole. Choosing silence is choosing to stop pouring water into a cup that has cracks. You realize that no amount of explaining will change someone who refuses to listen, and no amount of giving will satisfy someone who only takes. Silence allows you to conserve your strength instead of wasting it on cycles that never lead to growth or understanding. This kind of silence is intentional and grounded. It is not driven by anger or revenge, but by awareness. You are no longer trying to control the outcome or prove your worth. You are simply honoring your need for peace. In that quiet, you begin to reconnect with yourself, your values, your emotions, and your sense of clarity. Most importantly, self-preserving silence sends a powerful message to your own mind: I matter. It teaches you that you do not have to engage in every battle to be strong, and that walking away can sometimes be the bravest response of all. And once you step into that self-preserving silence, something else begins to happen, something you may not notice at first, but it becomes impossible to ignore. When you stop engaging, when you stop feeding the dynamic, the patterns that were once hidden start to surface. Silence does not create behavior, it reveals it. As long as you were responding, explaining, and trying, everything stayed blurred. Excuses felt believable. Apologies sounded convincing. Promises felt hopeful. But the moment you withdraw your attention, the truth steps forward on its own, because unhealthy dynamics depend on constant interaction to survive. When that interaction disappears, what remains is raw and unfiltered. This is when you begin to see how much of the connection was built on reaction rather than respect. You notice who checks on you with genuine concern and who only reaches out when they feel their control slipping. You see whether someone reflects, takes responsibility, and grows, or whether they escalate, manipulate, or deflect. Silence becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see in it. What's powerful here is that you are no longer chasing clarity. You are allowing clarity to come to you. You stop asking, why are they like this? And start observing, this is who they are when I no longer participate. That shift is life-changing. It replaces confusion with understanding and hope with honesty. This is also where many people feel guilt. They wonder if pulling back is unfair or cruel. But awareness is not cruelty. Seeing reality clearly is not betrayal. Silence simply removes the noise that once protected unhealthy behavior from being exposed. And in that quiet, you begin to trust yourself again. You learn that peace is not found by fixing others, but by recognizing patterns early and choosing yourself without apology. And as that clarity settles in, you begin to understand something even deeper. Control does not survive in silence. Control feeds on reaction. It needs emotion, urgency, explanations, and conflict to stay alive. When you responded to every message, defended every accusation, or tried to fix every misunderstanding, you were unknowingly keeping the cycle running. Your energy was the fuel. But now, in your quiet, that fuel is gone. Peace is unfamiliar to people who rely on chaos to feel powerful. When you stop reacting, you don't just step back, you change the entire balance. The arguments no longer land. The provocations lose their spark. The emotional hooks find nothing to hold on to. And that absence is deeply unsettling to someone who depended on your responses to feel in control. This is why silence feels so uncomfortable at first. You were trained to believe that engagement equals responsibility, that explaining yourself proves your goodness, that staying calm while being mistreated makes you strong. But real strength is knowing when not to respond. Real power is recognizing that not every invitation to react deserves your energy. As you remain still, something remarkable happens inside you. Your nervous system begins to calm. Your thoughts become clearer. You stop living in anticipation of the next message or the next emotional shift. Peace doesn't argue. Peace doesn't convince. Peace simply exists, and in doing so, it quietly dismantles control. This is also where fear often appears: fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of losing the connection. But what you start to realize is that any connection that requires you to abandon your peace to maintain it was never safe to begin with. By choosing peace over reaction, you are not giving up your voice. You are reclaiming it. You are deciding that your energy is sacred and that decision alone changes everything. And when that sacred energy is no longer available, when your reactions no longer arrive on demand, something shifts on the other side. Influence begins to fade, and when influence fades, manipulation often intensifies. This is not because you have done something wrong, but because the old tools no longer work. When calm boundaries replace emotional reactions, those who relied on access to your feelings may try harder to regain it. The tone changes, the behavior sharpens. There may be sudden guilt, urgency, or emotional pressure where there was once ease. Not because they suddenly care more, but because they feel less powerful. What you are witnessing is not love growing stronger, it is control struggling to survive. This is where many people get pulled back in. The escalation can feel convincing. It can sound like desperation, remorse, or fear of loss. And if you don't understand what's happening, you might mistake intensity for sincerity, but pay attention to the pattern. True care respects boundaries. Manipulation challenges them. True concern allows space. Manipulation creates panic. Your silence has changed the rules, and not everyone knows how to play without leverage. So they may push harder, say more, or twist the narrative to provoke a response, not because they seek resolution, but because reaction equals relevance. Your emotional engagement reassures them that they still matter, that they still influence your inner world. But here is the quiet strength you are developing. You no longer respond to pressure the way you once did. You pause. You observe. You recognize that escalation is often a sign that the dynamic depended on imbalance all along. And instead of rushing back into old roles, you stay grounded. You remember that peace does not need to defend itself. You understand that losing influence over you is not cruelty. It is a natural consequence of you choosing self-respect. And in that understanding, you continue to stand still, rooted and unshaken. And as you remain rooted in that stillness, as you refuse to be pulled back by pressure or guilt, the final shift takes place, one that is quiet but permanent. With no reaction to feed on and no leverage left to use, control finally collapses. What once felt powerful over you begins to lose its grip, not because you fought back, but because you stopped participating. This is the moment many people misunderstand. They expect a dramatic ending, a clear apology, or a visible realization from the other side. But real power shifts rarely announce themselves. Instead, you notice it in subtle ways. The messages stop coming, or they lose their emotional charge. The urgency fades. The chaos no longer follows you into your day. And for the first time, your emotional world belongs fully to you. This is where freedom begins, not with confrontation, but with detachment. You realize that the strongest boundary you ever set was not spoken, argued, or enforced. It was lived. Your silence taught a lesson no explanation ever could. Access to you is not guaranteed. Your presence is earned, not demanded. At this stage, the focus returns entirely to you. You stop wondering what they are thinking or doing. You stop measuring your healing by their react. You understand that their loss of control is not your responsibility, just as their inability to connect healthily never was. And in that understanding, something profound happens. You reclaim your sense of self. Your decisions become calmer. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. You no longer need to prove your worth because you feel it. The journey that began with silence ends with clarity, not because someone else changed, but because you did. You chose yourself. And once you do that, there is no going back, only forward, lighter, and finally free. And once that freedom settles in, you begin to see something with startling clarity, something that was impossible to recognize when you were still chasing answers, reassurance, or closure. You don't truly discover who someone is when you pursue them, you discover who they are when you stop. When you were chasing, everything felt confusing. Words mattered more than actions. Promises blurred reality. You filled in gaps with hope. But distance changes the lens. When you stop reaching out, stop fixing, stop holding the connection together alone, people reveal themselves without effort. What they choose to do or not do speaks louder than anything they ever said. This realization can be painful because it strips away illusion. You may notice that without your effort, there is no consistency. Without your patience, there is no accountability. Without your emotional labor, there is very little left. And that truth can sting, not because you failed, but because you finally stopped carrying what was never meant to be yours alone. But here is where strength is born. You stop personalizing their absence. You stop interpreting their behavior as a reflection of your worth. You understand that chasing kept you focused on potential, while stopping showed you reality. And reality, while sometimes uncomfortable, is always freeing. This is also where self-trust begins to return. You realize that your instincts were right all along, but they were drowned out by noise, hope, and effort. In the quiet, your inner voice grows clearer. It no longer asks for permission. It no longer negotiates with discomfort. It simply observes and knows. And with that knowing comes peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on someone else's mood, but a grounded peace rooted in truth. You are no longer searching for answers in someone else's behavior. You have already found them by choosing to stop. And as that truth settles in, another realization quietly takes shape. Your absence carries a weight you never knew your presence held. When you step away, when your energy is no longer available, it creates a space that cannot be ignored. Your silence becomes a mirror, one that reflects back what was once hidden beneath distraction and control. When you were present, giving, responding, adjusting, there was always something to focus on outside of themselves. Your emotions, your questions, your reactions filled the room. But when you remove that energy, there is nothing left to deflect. The noise fades, and what remains is self-confrontation. Not everyone is comfortable with that. Not everyone is willing to look at themselves without a buffer. Your absence forces reflection not because you intended it to, but because it leaves no alternative. The patterns become harder to deny, the roles become clearer, the imbalance becomes undeniable. And while you are healing in quiet strength, the other side is faced with the echo of what they avoided when you were still there, absorbing the weight. This is why silence can feel so powerful. It doesn't accuse, it doesn't demand, it simply exists. And in that stillness, truths surface naturally. You are no longer explaining what hurt you. You are no longer proving what you deserve. Your absence says it all. What's important to understand is that this mirror is not your responsibility. You are not silent to teach a lesson or force awareness. You are silent because you chose peace. Any realization that comes from your absence is a byproduct, not the goal. And as you recognize this, something within you softens. You release the need to be understood by those who never tried to understand you. You see that your energy was valuable all along, and that stepping back was not abandonment, but self-respect taking form. And as your absence becomes a mirror and your energy begins to reclaim its rightful place, you start to notice another truth. Your healing will feel like abandonment to those who once benefited from your availability. This is a paradox that confuses many people. When you finally stop giving what is not yours to give, when you finally protect your boundaries, it may trigger anger, frustration, or even guilt from those who relied on your constant presence. But that is not your burden to carry. It is the natural consequence of them realizing that they can no longer take without consideration. This reaction is not a reflection of your character. It is a reflection of their dependence on your energy. They thrived in a dynamic where your emotions were always accessible, where your compassion filled gaps that were never theirs to fill. Your withdrawal exposes that imbalance, and any discomfort they feel is a sign that you are finally no longer a tool for their control. It is important to remember that this discomfort is temporary for them and transformative for you. Your silence is not rejection, it is reclamation. You are reclaiming time, energy, and peace that were previously consumed by endless cycles of trying to please, fix, or explain. You are stepping into a space where your presence is intentional, not obligatory. And this step is revolutionary because it teaches you something crucial. You cannot heal in a space where your boundaries are ignored. You cannot grow in a relationship that depends on your shrinking. Your absence, while it may feel uncomfortable for others, is the catalyst for your liberation. It is a declaration that your life, your energy, and your emotions are yours to protect. By embracing this, you no longer apologize for stepping away. You no longer rationalize your need for peace. You simply honor it. And in doing so, you demonstrate the most profound form of self-respect there is. And as you embrace the liberation that comes from stepping back, another profound truth emerges. Boundaries do not change others, they change you. This is a lesson that so many of us only learn through experience. For years, we may believe that setting limits will provoke change in someone else, that if we are firm enough, clear enough, or patient enough, others will finally behave differently. But the reality is far simpler and far more empowering. Boundaries are never about controlling another person. They are about reclaiming control over yourself. When you stop bending, explaining, or sacrificing your peace, you are not punishing anyone. You are redefining your relationship with your own energy. You are deciding what you will accept and what you will not. And in doing so, you cultivate strength, clarity, and confidence. The change you experience is internal, but its effects ripple outward. You begin to walk through life with a steadiness that cannot be shaken by manipulation or expectation. You no longer allow yourself to be pulled into cycles that drain your energy or cloud your judgment. This is transformative because it shifts the focus from how can I fix them to how can I protect myself. It is not selfish, it is essential. When your boundaries are firm, consistent, and non negotiable, you teach yourself that your well being matters more than someone else's comfort at your expense. You stop measuring your worth by the reactions of others and start measuring it by your ability to remain grounded, even in the presence of chaos. And as you live within these boundaries, you realize the true power of choice. You choose what you engage with, who you allow in your space, and how much energy you invest. The world does not change overnight, but you do. And that change, the quiet, unwavering, self-protective change, is nothing short of liberation. And as you grow stronger within the boundaries you have set, as you reclaim your energy and honor your peace, you arrive at a truth that completes the journey. Reclaiming your voice sometimes begins by choosing not to speak. For so long, many of us equate speaking with being heard, explaining with being validated, and reacting with being understood. But in the presence of imbalance, those efforts often accomplish little more than feeding the very dynamics that diminish us. Silence, when chosen intentionally, becomes a profound act of self-respect and empowerment. Choosing not to speak does not mean you are passive or weak. It means you are deliberate. It means you understand the value of your energy and refuse to expend it where it will be misused. It is a recognition that your worth is not tied to constant engagement, that you do not need to justify yourself to those unwilling or incapable of seeing the truth. In this quiet, you rediscover yourself. You listen to your own thoughts, honor your own feelings, and trust your own judgment. Your voice becomes more than words, it becomes presence, strength, and conviction. This final step is also a declaration of freedom. It says to the world and to yourself that you are no longer available for manipulation, that your energy cannot be borrowed at someone else's whim, and that your peace is non-negotiable. By choosing silence, you are not retreating. You are ascending. You are stepping into clarity, into self-awareness, and into a space where your choices are guided by truth, not fear. And in that silence, a remarkable transformation occurs. You realize that freedom is not granted by others. It is claimed by you. Your voice is not measured by how loudly you speak, but by how fully you honor yourself. Choosing silence becomes the most powerful statement you can make, that your life, your energy, and your peace belong to you and to no one else. And now, as we come to the close of this journey together, I want you to feel the weight and the power of what we've explored. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is the gateway to freedom, to clarity, and to self respect. Every step we've walked through today, from reclaiming your energy to observing truth to standing firmly in your boundaries, leads to one ultimate realization: you are the keeper of your own peace. No one else has the power to give it to you, and no one else can take it away unless you allow it. Think about that for a moment. Every argument you no longer engage in, every manipulation you no longer absorb, every expectation you no longer carry, these are not losses. They are victories. They are the reclaiming of pieces of yourself that were waiting, sometimes for years, to be restored. And that restoration is not just emotional, it is transformational. It changes the way you walk into every room, the way you carry yourself, the way you see the world and your place within it. You are no longer reacting to chaos. You are moving through with calm, confidence, and clarity. The beauty of this process is that it doesn't require permission. You don't need validation to set your boundaries, to honor your feelings, or to step back when your peace is at stake. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to stop explaining. You are allowed to reclaim your voice, not by speaking louder, but by choosing when, how, and to whom it matters. So let this be your call to action. Embrace the power of your silence. Trust the wisdom of your presence, and know that every choice you make to protect your energy is a step toward your freedom. Stand firm, stand tall, and remember this: your peace is priceless, your voice is sacred, and your life is yours to live fully, boldly, and unapologetically.